Welcome to Nurse Burnout Solutions, the show that empowers you to beat stress, reclaim your energy, and discover lasting fulfillment in your nursing career. I'm your host, Betty McLean. I'm a nurse with over 20 years of experience, and I'm also a certified life and certified burnout coach. I'm here to share expert insights with you, a lot of practical tools, and some inspiring stories. So join me as we navigate the challenges of a career in healthcare, and I help you find renewed purpose and resiliency, one episode at a time. Get started. So welcome back to Nurse Burnout Solutions, and today's going to be a little bit of a different topic, although I think it's very, very important. And so we're going to dive into side hustles and making money. And I have invited Faith Hovde today. She introduces herself as serial entrepreneur and is the confident entrepreneur coach. So Faith, I'll let you just introduce yourself, and then I will talk a little bit about why this topic is important to me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me today. My name is Faith Hovde. I am the confident entrepreneur. I coach entrepreneurs. I've been an entrepreneur myself for over 18 years. And ironically, I started my side hustle when I was working at a hospital. So this is a perfect topic. I love this topic. So I'm excited to be here and chat with you about it.
Awesome. So there's a joke or a stereotype in the nursing world that nurses are always doing side hustles. In fact, even there's a big influencer, a doctor who's also an influencer, who made a song joking about how nurses are always selling lip scents, that company that was popular a few years ago. But I know that for myself, I've done Mary Kay businesses. I've done, back when scrapbooking was big, I did creative memories. I've always kind of had this idea in the back of my head, and I have a theory on why that is.
Let's hear it.
So most nurses work, not all. If you work in a clinic, you typically work 5/8, but a lot of nurses work 3/12. And there's this, I think it's probably societal, but there's this idea that that's not enough. I have 4 days off. I should be doing more to contribute to my household's finances. And I think we need those 4 days off to rest, recoup, take care of ourselves, enjoy our hobbies, that kind of thing. But it's really enticing to pick up an extra shift at work or to pick up a side hustle. The picking up extra shifts at work, though, becomes extremely draining. Right? And so I think definitely for me, I was thinking, well, how can I contribute more to my income without picking up an extra shift at the hospital, and I can do something fun? And that's my theory on why so many nurses gravitate towards having a side hustle. I know for me, those side hustles that I tried at first, because I'm still working full-time as an RN, and I'm also coaching. But this feels very balanced because my priorities are in alignment, right? Whereas when I was doing those other side hustles, those weren't in alignment with what really sparked joy and passion for me.
Right.
So that's my theory on why so many nurses do that. And what's your thought on maybe that?
Yeah, so I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's multifaceted. I think there's this society standard for women, and I mean, we could go into the history of women working or working outside of the home, I should say. But I think there is this standard of we have to fill our time, and we haven't, as a society, been taught that rest is important. I think it's becoming more apparent. That might be the only good thing we got from COVID, is that we were shown that we can rest and it's okay, or that we have to do that. So I think that is one part of it, is that we've been taught that we have to fill our time and that rest is not productive. And I think we're on the same page believing that rest is a productive, it is an action. So that's number one. And then number two, I think, when we're talking about anyone having a side hustle, whether it's nurses, even stay-at-home moms, when they start to do these side hustles, they're usually trying to fill a void of some sort. So, and it's different for everybody. I think sometimes it's a financial void. Maybe they just want to pick up a little cash, or sometimes it's a creative void. I know for me, when I started my photography business, I started it because I needed a creative outlet that was separate. Like, I didn't have any creativity in my job at the hospital. I was in admin, so I didn't have any creativity, any excitement. I had joy from working with my coworkers and with my patients, but I didn't have that creative outlet. So that was my goal, is I wanted a creative outlet. And I got that. And 18 years later, now I have a business. But so I think when we're talking about those side hustles and how we can determine whether that's going to be a good fit, like you were talking about, is what do we want out of this? Like, why are we starting this? Is it just so we can have some fun and get out and have parties, like for the MLM type things? Those are great for people that just want to, socialize and have fun and maybe make a little extra cash. But I think thinking about that and being cognitive of, like, why am I actually doing this? And I think that's true for everything. I think we should be intentional with things. But that's my theory on, if you're doing a side hustle and figuring out what is good for you and your family, you can start there of, like, what am I trying to get out of this?
Yeah. I think that's such a good point, because when I started looking for side hustles, I did not ask myself, what am I missing in my life? What's my goal here? What's the intention, right? It was like, hey, something was offered to me as opportunity. I'm like, sure, I'll try that. Maybe make some money. Cool, right? But I think that's so important, because I've seen a couple of nurses who really went into the creative arts as their side hustle. And nursing, I mean, you've been in that hospital environment, right? It's not a creative environment.
Right.
It is very much a science protocol. I mean, there is not a lot of room for creativity. So especially for those nurses and healthcare professionals who have, I mean, I think all humans are creative. And I think we all have the ability, not only the ability, I think we all feel better when we're creating in some way.
Yes.
But for those who that's really like a driving force of theirs, like really thinking, okay, maybe I need to pick up a pottery wheel. I know a nurse who does beautiful pottery and has made a beautiful business of it. And so, finding that thing, that intentional thing of, maybe it is money. Maybe I need to find the best source of fast income because my family's struggling right now.
Right.
And go all in with that intention. Or maybe I'm missing joy and fun. Maybe I need to have parties more often. I love that idea of, like, so I think that's a great first tip for our listeners is,
well, and I wanted to add to that.
Think about that.
No, I wanted to add to that, because I think a lot of times the other thing, and I find this in my coaching practice a lot too, when people are like, oh, I want to start a business, I always ask them why. Because it's a lot of work to have a business. It's even if it isn't just a side hustle, it's still work. You still have to do taxes and all those things. But the question I ask, is this a hobby? Is this something you want to do for joy, or is this something you want to do for money? And sometimes you really don't know until you get started, one way or the other. But a lot of times people turn their hobbies into businesses, and that takes away the joy. So you have to be very careful, and that's why it's so important to know what your real intentions are. If your intentions are just to have fun and do something creative and maybe make a little money on the side, that's not a full-blown business, right? So you don't have to make it into a full-blown business. And just letting yourself do things just for, it's kind of along the same lines of rest, doing a hobby just for the pure joy of doing that hobby is totally valid and totally the right thing to do if that's for you. And even if you are making money at it, like, it can still be something that brings you a lot of joy.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've been in business for a long time. I get a lot of joy out of business and helping other people find their joy in their businesses. So it is an important piece, but, regardless, having a business is a lot of work. So,
Yes.
are you going to be, when you're a nurse and you have this intense career and high stress, and then you're doing this hobby? I'll just use photography as an example. I'm doing photography because I love it and I love being creative and I love, photographing bugs or whatever it is. But then someone says, "Oh my gosh, I want to buy that from you." And you're like, "Okay, great." And then your gears start turning. And, I love the gears. I love, as the entrepreneur coach, I love the gears. I love seeing those gears turn. However, it can be detrimental to the person if you then now are giving yourself another high stress job because you took that hobby and you made it a job. So it's just knowing, if my goal is to have a fun hobby that maybe makes me a little money, that's totally fine. But it's just going in knowing that and, constantly reassessing so that you're making sure that you don't reach that point of burnout, because it's very easy to do.
Yes, exactly. And I think when we were talking back and forth, let's talk a little bit about how you avoid that overwhelm and that burnout, because we're already experiencing that as nurses. And if you are listening to this and you are in burnout, message me because you do not have to stay there. But if you have the bandwidth and you're like, yeah, I want to take on this side hustle, how do you keep from that overwhelm and that, I don't know, how do you prioritize? How do you keep everything in alignment so that you can enjoy your life and have that balance you need?
Yeah. So, we kind of touched on it already, like the priorities is what are your priorities? So let's say that your priorities are to, like, you work 3 days a week and you want to have something that brings you joy that you do on your days off while your kids are at school. So that's pretty clear, right? Like, I'm going to do this while my kids are at school, because I would assume that my priority is to spend time with my family still. And it's so easy for people to, in any career and any hobby, you can make a hobby very toxic very quickly if you are doing it in the wrong way for the wrong reasons. And what I mean by that is making sure that your priorities are straight. So let's say if you ask most women, well, and men too, I would say their priority is going to be their family. But then taking that a step further, like, obviously your family, I would hope, if you have a family, I hope your family is your priority. But what does that actually mean? Does that mean that you want to, well, I'll just use an example. Like, for me, when my business started taking off and I was busy all the time, I could have very easily spent every single waking minute working on my business. But it was important to me to be able to walk my kids to the bus and be able to pick them up from school. That was my boundary that I put in place for myself. So I know that both of you and I are big on boundaries. Yep. So it's not just boundaries when it comes to other people, it's boundaries for ourselves. And we call that self-discipline, but self-discipline isn't as fun as boundaries. But that's what it is we're creating boundaries for ourselves, because then if you notice yourself starting to cross those boundaries, that's how you avoid burnout. That is always the first point when I'm talking to clients about burnout, is what boundaries can we put in place for you, for other people, for your job, that are protecting you. And we think about boundaries as a fencing. A fence is there to protect you. It's there to keep things in. It's there to keep things out. And so it's a really important thing to prioritize. What is your priority? And then what boundaries are you going to put in place to protect those priorities? That's always the number one.
Yeah, I love that. Because I think so many of, not all maybe, but so many of life's challenges can be solved with really clear, simple guidelines, boundaries, that a little bit of self-discipline. It doesn't have to be, world-class discipline that, makes you some kind of, super athlete. Just that little bit of discipline that says, in your example, I'm going to make sure I am not working when I need to take my kids to the bus. That's that's a boundary for me. That's a priority for me, right? And so I think that really is I like to teach my people to do boundaries if then. So if, in your case, you could have said, if I have work or emails or business things to do before work or before I take the kids to class, then I will leave it until later, right? Like it doesn't, it's just like this, it might happen. I might have work calling to me. I might have customers calling to me. I might have invoices to send. I might have parties to arrange, but I'm not going to do it before this time of day.
Right.
So,
well, and also we talked a little bit about rest.
Yes.
You know, knowing, you know, it's so funny to me because I always joke that like the healthcare industry is the most unhealthy.
100%. 100%.
So it's ironic, but also kind of sad because I think it's just where we're at, right? Yeah. Like we can't 100% do anything about that except on a personal level.
Yes.
And so, you know, on a personal level, if you know that you are exhausted after working those 3 days, then give yourself that time to rest on that first day off, you know, so don't schedule any of your side hustle stuff. Don't expect yourself to, you know, work on your family. I know for me, like if I don't have time to cook dinner and grocery shop and all those, you know, do all those like domestic things, like that doesn't make me feel good. So, and everybody's different. Everybody has their different priorities, but figuring out what that actually means for you is just so, gosh, it's just going to protect you and protect your family. And even if you don't have a family that you're living with, you know, even down the road, it's going to protect your loved ones, whether you have a family or not. So it's just, when we think about boundaries, we have to think about boundaries as a protection, because a lot of times they get a negative thing. But that's the.
Well, and I like the statement, boundaries are for you, not to control other people, right? Boundaries are for you. They're to protect you. They're to keep, like you said, all the good things in and the things you don't want out. And they're not even necessarily bad things. They're just the things that you don't want on your property, in your space, right? Exactly. That's what the fence is for. So, boundaries are a super, super useful tool once you've learned to implement them and hold to them. And,
And the other thing is just figuring out what your goal is. You know, if you're starting a side hustle, if you can put, and that's kind of, the goals and the boundaries kind of go together. So if you can say, okay, well, and obviously within realistic goals, you know, if you're saying, oh, I want to work an hour a day and I want to be a millionaire in this MLM by the end of the year, probably not realistic. Hate to burst anybody's bubble, but you know, having realistic goals and saying, because to your point of the if then, you can use the this then that. So if this, then that, and figuring out your goals. So let's say your goal is to, you know, bring in $500 a month extra for your family. And that, you know, that equals doing X amount of, I'm just using the MLM because you started with that.
It's a great example because a lot of nurses choose that.
Yeah. So let's say that you have the goal of $500 a month, you know that you make that on 2 parties typically, but the number one priority is to be with your family on, you know, most of the days that you have off. Well, if you can schedule as many things as you want, right? So that means that if you know that you only need $500 a month, you don't need to do 10 parties in a week. Right. So you're going to say no, because that's the boundary. You know that that's going to end up burning you out. Doing 10 appointments, you'll make more money, but you don't really need to make that much more money. You need to make $500. So if you know the goal, then you can use that. But then the this, then that, if you're starting a side hustle and you're not sure if you want it to be, you know, say maybe you want it to be your full-time business someday, even putting boundaries and priorities and goals in within that. So I want to start my photography business and I want it to be my full-time business. That's my dream. I want to have a studio and all this stuff, but I don't want to sacrifice my family. That's my number one. So I'm going to put that in place. Or I don't want to sacrifice my nursing career. So I'm going to always prioritize that. So I'm going to give myself goals like, okay, if I haven't made this certain amount of money. I'm using money as a tool. I think money is a tool. You know, we can use it as a, you know, it's like a scale, like a measuring stick.
Yeah.
But I want to make this much money. So if in 3 months I'm not making that much money, then maybe I'm going to take it back to a hobby. And I'm not going to worry about making money from this particular hobby. Or even boundaries as far as the emotional part of it. Like I want to feel joy when I do this. And if I'm not feeling joy, if I'm feeling stressed out and I feel pressured, then that's going to start stealing my joy. It's going to lead to burnout. And then you're burning out from your side hustle, not necessarily your nursing career. And that would be tragic, wouldn't it?
Right.
So, you know, just, you know, making sure that you're actually thinking through these things. And I don't think a lot of people do. And not just in the nursing, I think in general, like people don't think through these things. And you can't think through everything. I mean, you can't plan for everything, but you can at least get your priorities and constantly be adjusting them. That's the other thing is you may get started and be like, wow, this isn't what I thought. I used to bring on interns for photography in my studio. And oh my gosh, they'd work for me for a month and be like, actually, I don't want to be a photographer. And it wasn't like the purpose, obviously. It wasn't the goal to like, you know, cancel their dreams. But, you know, sometimes those things that are fun as hobbies, enjoyable as hobbies, once you start doing them as a business and you actually put expectations on them, it makes it not as fun. So that's why if my goal is to have fun and to have joy. You can have that and have a business, but you just have to know that that's a goal. And if you start a business and you like, for me, bookkeeping doesn't bring me any joy. So if I'm having a business, I want to be able to outsource my bookkeeping so that I don't have to do that thing because it does not bring me joy.
Yeah. Well, I think when you're talking about your goals and understanding, you know, what are my goals? Reevaluating in 3 months. Is this what I thought it was going to be? I think that's so important because what I've found is I went to nursing school. I have a 4-year degree in nursing, right? And I know every aspect of being a nurse. When I started my MLM side hustles, I knew nothing about business, and I didn't ever try to learn, right? And so after a few months, I was like, I'm so confused. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm done, right?
Right.
When I started coaching, my priority was helping nurses get out of burnout. And that's a huge passion for me. And so I have been willing to learn how to be a business owner. Right? Because that is a whole thing.
It is.
And setting goals and determining, okay, it's been 3 months. Where am I on my, you know, I have to make revenue in order to pay for things like a Zoom account and an email account and, you know, run an actual business and pay taxes and all of that. So all of those things that make an actual business versus a hobby. So I think it's an interesting thing to think about is if you do want a side hustle and maybe you do want it to take over and you're ready to retire from your nursing career and move to something different, something more creative, something that is more passionate, you just have to know that like there's bookkeeping stuff that comes along with it. There's goals and metrics and taxes and forms, you know.
And social media.
And there's so much that you can do and so much you won't be able to do all of it. But I think it goes back to what you were saying. It's like, why are we starting this in the first place? Is it worth learning all of the things? I'm learning how to market. I'm learning how to do all the things, right? And it's worth it to me because the reason that I started this business is important to me.
Right.
Whereas when I had started my, 10 years ago, I was like, Mary Kay sounds fun. I like makeup. It wasn't worth it to me to learn to be a business owner at that point, right? So I think that for those who are listening and who are thinking, yeah, maybe I do want a side hustle. Maybe I want a business. Maybe I want a beautiful new career. Like, I like the 3 month, like, get into it, see what you think, and then be realistic. What are you trying to get out of it? And how do you do that in a way that's sustainable?
Well, and I love your point about the passion, fuels the function.
Yeah.
So that when you have a business, you have to learn these certain things. But if you're not willing to learn all the things, I mean, you went to nursing school, and I understand you were probably kind of forced to learn all the things, but you didn't have to, you didn't have to complete those courses. You had the choice. And I think that's true in any point in our lives. We have a choice to change it and try something new. And there's nothing wrong with trying new things. And I think that's the other thing. You can have a career that supports your lifestyle and then have a side hustle or even just a hobby that supports your passions. And maybe those will morph back and forth. I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I've had lots of different businesses over the years, and it's because I follow that passion. And whenever I've done that, it's been successful. So, but it's because, like you said, I'm willing to do the boring things in order to do the fun things, and in order to do the things that I am passionate about. I'm willing to do all this other stuff. I'm willing to do bookkeeping, even though I don't want to. Luckily, I'm in a place where I can outsource that now. But I'm willing to do it. I had to learn it. I mean, I couldn't do that right off the bat. So, that's, I think, a good thought process to have. Like moving towards the passion will it won't make you passionate about the function, but it'll make you do the function.
Yes. I still don't like doing the functional things that make the business run, but I don't mind it because I know that it's allowing me to coach my clients and help get them out from a place of overwhelm and absolute stress to a place where they're enjoying their life.
Right.
Yeah.
It's helping you reach your goal.
It's worth it to learn marketing for that.
Yeah, exactly.
What else? Is there anything else that you would if there's a nurse out there thinking, I need a side hustle or I want to switch to a brand spanking different career, is there anything else that you would leave them with?
I guess I would just, I kind of touched on it, but just try it. I mean, a lot of times we don't do things out of fear, and that's not a fun place to live. So if it's possible, obviously figure out your priorities, but just try it. I mean, you don't even have to try it as a business, and I obviously don't recommend just jumping into a business, but do some research. I mean, as nurses specifically, I know that you have a heart for research, so and knowing. So do some research. Go, if you're interested in like a career in Mary Kay, go follow someone that does Mary Kay around before you dive in fully. Get all the information. A lot of times, especially I think in healthcare, it's so reactive. So we tend to take that and apply it to the rest of our lives. Let yourself slow down. Let yourself slow down. Let yourself think. Let yourself try things and go from there before you dive in. And then, because, I always say confidence breeds confidence. So if you want to have this confident side hustle or confident hobby, and then you just jump in and you're not taking the time to prioritize and to do your research and all that, and then you fail, I don't like the word fail because I don't think any information is ever wasted, but if you are doing something and you know that you can be confident in it, you're going to be more confident to do other things. So, and it may even affect your nursing career. It may make you being confident in making confident choices in the rest of your life will affect your nursing career. So, or whatever your career may be. So anyway, that would be my,
I love that.
Kind of last, like just try it, but do your research and make good choices.
I think that's a wonderful final tip because nurses are trained to be, we're trained to be proactive in certain situations, but we are very reactive. We have to be. So I love that. Just slow down and actually spend 30 minutes researching. Reach out to some people who are doing what you're doing and ask for a coffee date. Find out.
People love to talk about their businesses.
I
think, that's what my podcast is about. It's just literally talking to people that have businesses, and they love it. When you've done your business and you're passionate about it and you've been successful, of course you want to talk about it. So ask someone to coffee that's doing what you do. Ask to shadow them.
I love that.
It.
I love that. So speaking of your podcast, if someone's listening and they're like, I need more of Faith, I need to know how to be more confident, I need to understand being an entrepreneur, I need to understand my entrepreneur mindset, like how can they find you, follow you, etc.?
Yeah. Well, you can find me on pretty much every social media, The Confident Entrepreneur. And then my podcast is The Confident Entrepreneur Podcast. Yeah, that's the best way to reach out to me is on social media. You can go to my website, which is confidententrepreneur.net. But yeah, I'm pretty accessible. But yeah, the podcast, I even have it on there where you can ask questions on the podcast. So I love to get questions and then I'll answer them.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for all your thoughts and your wisdom. I think it's a wonderful conversation. I'm excited to see what people do with this information. Thank you for being here.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening today to Nurse Burnout Solutions. Remember, I really believe that all stress is manageable and burnout is not inevitable. If you are struggling with stress or in burnout, I can help. Check out the show notes for ways that we can connect and get you the support that you deserve.